And we're rolling.
Are we rolling? We're rolling.
We are rolling. We roll.
Okay.
This is how we work.
This is a hi, Norma.
Hi, Rom. Maybe a few breathing exercises.
So yeah, let's do that. Let's, so you have to lead this.
Me?
Yeah, you have to lead the
you're
breathing.
part of theater, right?
You have to lead the
might
breathing
have...
exercises.
Okay.
He missed the day where they taught breathing exercises. That was the thing.
I do nothing that relaxes me.
It's true, he doesn't.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. That is a good high.
Right?
I'm feeling better about myself already.
Like,
Well, see, there you
chill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Norma, thank you for being here. We, of course, appreciate you coming on camera or on podcast or on...
It is. They are cameras. Like, it's fine.
Coming here with us today to talk about yourself, talk to us. Let's getting to know everyone a little bit more, but also being able to let us know about you, what it's like to be you, and about your journey, right? Like I think that's kind of what we're interested in. So I'd like, real briefly, how long have you lived in Merced County?
I've been here for almost 20 years. Wow. So I think 18 years. It's going to be 19 in August. And I wasn't really supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got here because somebody saved me. Somebody.
Okay.
I know.
Tell us more.
So, growing up, there was a lot of turmoil in my home, alcoholism, and everything
where did
that
you
comes.
Grow up, by the way?
So I grew up in Santa Maria, Santa Maria, between Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo, but not rich like that and wealthy. You know, it's
the other part.
Yeah, the other part.
The other part they don't talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, the part that nobody knows about unless they've ever been there.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much like Merced, large farm working community, a lot of underestimated folks. And, I grew up in a mobile home park. I grew up in a trailer park. So I always wanted to leave and have my own home. And, with everything happening, I just didn't want to live there anymore. And so I thought at 18, I'm heading out. And my dad always made sure to tell me every day, education is your way out. Education is your way out of the trailer. Education is the way out of poverty. And so that's the path that I chose. I got accepted to UCSD, which I was really proud of because I wasn't like a 4.0 student. And my senior year, my mom was hospitalized because of the effects of alcoholism, and I didn't do well in high school. My grades were, they were lower. I had to take care of the home, my sister, myself, and so there was a lot of barriers to being successful in school. As a result, summer comes around and UCSD is like, you know what? We accepted too many students. We got to cut somewhere. You didn't even have a really great GPA. Your essay was really what got you in. So sorry, but not sorry. I know. I was devastated. And so I thought, I'm just going to leave, probably go into a military branch. I wanted to go into the Air Force.
Okay. Why the Air Force?
Why the Air Force?
I say this as a military brat.
Yes.
I grew up in an Air Force family, and we traveled all. In fact, Merced was the first place that my dad got stationed at when he got out of college, and so Merced was the first place that I came to when I got out of college. So why the Air Force?
Because at the time, that's the only military branch that I knew where I could become a pilot.
There you
I
go.
wanted to become a pilot. Yes, I've always been fascinated by flying planes. Yeah,
awesome.
Always.
All right. And why was education so important to your father?
Oh my gosh, it was. Even now, I get a little sentimental. He grew up dirt poor in Mexico, and it's a small. At the time, it was a village in Aguascalientes, Mexico, which is the third smallest state in Mexico, and it became a state because of a kiss to the cheek. So that's a different story. Yeah, I know. Wow. So he grew up really in a one bedroom with 12 brothers and sisters, and it was a dirt floor. They didn't have enough money for shoes. clothing. Sometimes they didn't even, one of the things that he says is, a veces ni teníamos suficiente para la manteca for the frijoles. So sometimes we didn't even have oil to fry the beans. They would drink coffee as kids, like 5 year olds, like coffee was instead of milk because they couldn't afford milk, or, they had cows in the backyard, but the milk, they had to sell the milk in order to get money. And so coffee was the only option they had. So he saw it really education as economic mobility and as a way of moving out of poverty. And so he immigrated to the United States eventually when he was a young 16-year-old teenage boy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so he got to really experience the opportunities that existed here in the States. He ended up working in agriculture and moved into going into a nursery. So he has a really green thumb. And there he just grew plants, and he got a lot of mentors who knew the system, who knew how to really make a life for yourself that wasn't just always working and working and working. So he really taught me about like investing and retirement and all of that. So he got to see what people with education are able to accomplish, and how your mind really opens up, and how you're able to get better jobs, better paying jobs, versus spending your time out in the fields. And so I think those are some of the reasons why he was just so he just, I don't know how to say it in English, pero me inculcó, where, how do you say inculcó? Inculcó? How do you say that?
I don't know.
He drove down.
Okay.
But it's even more than that. It's almost like a part of the values that we live by.
Yeah.
Sounds like grit.
Grit.
Sounds like grit, right? Persistence through adversity and determination, right?
Or there's just no translation. Like that's, I don't know. It's not, I think in certain,
No. Inculcó, like he made it a part of our DNA. He made it. I mean, it was daily that he would tell me this in the mornings.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Like I'm reminded of the philosophy class that I took. I was so concentrated in college that I'm like, I'm gonna take philosophy and rock climbing and bowling.
That sounds like a fun experience.
It was amazing. That's what happens when you test out of most of your gen ed classes, and you get to spend your first year just discovering yourself. So my philosophy teacher told me about the story of, what is that part in the Bible where Jesus is asking, who is it? Is it Paul? Like, do you love me?
That's Peter.
Peter.
Yeah.
He's like, do you love me? And the King James version, Peter's response is, yeah, I love you, basically. Yeah. And Jesus is like, do you love me? And he's like, yeah, I love you. And he's all like, so in kind of the Greek language, we have 6 different words for love. We have brotherly love, we have like romantic love, we have, fatherly love. And so there's a separate word for every single one of these designations of love. But in the English language, we just say love. So there's certain lost in the translation, right, between when you come into the English language, then we're like, we just never develop those specific words, which I always find fascinating, like, learning even more about things like that. Then, like, there's just no word in the English language that kind of describes that, right?
Yes.
So that's what I'm reminded of. Anyway, I get off. See, this is me getting on tangents again. Get used to this.
I love this. I'm just.
That was worth it.
Yeah.
So you were not accepted.
Yeah.
What did you do next?
I held on to that secret for a while.
Yeah.
Well, my admissions was revoked, so I held on to that for a while, and then I told one of my friends, who happens to be my partner, Mauricio.
Okay.
And he says, like, well, we need to do something. So we get together with the college counselor, and she said, hey, I called them. This is what they said. Essentially, what I told you, which was low GPA, SE got you in. And you've already gotten to UC Merced, and they're still accepting students, although they started school last week. So what's it? Oh, like, are you in? So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Yeah.
So you came to UC Merced because UC Davis was all like, nah, and UC Merced was like, please.
Yes. We want you. Come to us, please. So I came here.
You must have been one of the very first classes, right? Like,
I was the second class.
Second class.
I was part of the second class and graduated with the third class.
Wow.
yeah, it was. And I still, even coming here, I thought, I'm going to transfer out. Like, how do you, I want to go to UCSC. I want to be next to the beach, right?
And there's nothing, at that point, there's nothing here. I mean, because I
It was just 3 buildings, I think.
Yeah, I moved to Merced 2004. So I'll celebrate my 20 years in August.
Oh, nice.
So
congratulations.
And there was nothing here.
No.
Like there was UC Merced was like a dream of a building, and then gradually, so you're here, and then there was no connection really even to the rest of the town. Like you're there, and if you didn't have a car, you're basically just stuck there.
Stranded.
Stranded.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So how was it like being at UC in those early days? Like,
Well, let me tell you, orientation, some of the on-campus police immediately were said, don't go to the South Side. Don't go to the South Side. Don't party in the South Side. Yeah.
Quite the orientation. Thank you, police.
Immediately, right? And I avoided it. I didn't know. Well, first of all, I didn't have a car, so I couldn't go exploring. How am I going to go on foot? But eventually I got to the South Side. I'm like, wait. This is where I've lived in Santa Maria. Right. This is my county. This is essentially where I come from. How are you telling me not to come here? Wow. I know.
Gosh.
And so it was. I got to explore a lot. Just like all other young people, I changed my majors multiple times. But
like what? So when you?
Oh my God.
So did you go to school being like, I'm going to be a pilot? Is that where you started? No, but where?
No.
Okay. So
I wanted to do public relations.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
I can see you in that.
Yes, I wanted to do public relations. I come to UC Merced. They don't have that at all. I want to leave, right? I want to transfer in 2 years, but then I end up staying because there's so much opportunity. I got to, essentially, just like the UC was being built from the ground up as students, we were also building experiences from the ground up. We were really trailblazers on this campus because you had this blank canvas of things that you could develop and explore and create. And that's exactly, what I tried doing. So I ended up, I think I played myself and I told myself, I want to be a doctor. Like, but that's just what, you don't know any better as a young person. Sometimes like, a doctor, lawyer, or that's really what, parents talk about. And so I tried biology. I was like, oh yeah, no, this isn't for me. The skills that I developed in high school were not the same skills that I needed for college at all. And then more so that I wasn't really interested in it. I thought I was, but then when it came down to it, I was like, oh God, this is boring. What am I reading about cells? So then I became a cognitive science major. It's at the time it was one of the few universities, I don't know if in the nation or in California, that had cognitive science as a major. UCSD was another one, top tier in cognitive science. And then I also majored in psychology. And through that, I started exploring and learning more about the brain, and that's really what caught my attention. I pursued an internship that was for, STEM majors, and I wasn't really a STEM major. I think I could make a case through cognitive science, but I ended up getting a position in a 2-year internship. So I got to do neural stem cell research. At UC Merced, where I was using fruit flies, I was replacing motor neurons in fruit flies to help inform Parkinson's disease.
Super cool.
How amazing is that?
Okay.
Right. And then the second year I went to UC Davis and I was studying Fragile X syndrome, which is a developmental disability. And I was working with mice. And that's when I realized I don't want to work in labs. I'm alone all day in a lab. And now I'm having to, take out the brains of little mice.
And you're like, I'm good.
Yeah. This isn't for me. Yeah. And at the time it was during the, we were getting to the Great Recession or when everything started happening. Yeah. And so labs started getting less and less funding. The stress of that really, and people not really having the emotional intelligence to deal with some of those issues, it leaked onto how they mentored you, how they coached you. And so I just didn't really like that atmosphere of just, not being very human centric. At the time, I didn't know it was that. I didn't realize that until a lot later in life.
It's interesting because I do think a lot of times college is not human-centric sometimes. And it really does. So for someone like me that studies really well, and I read, I read fast and I retain. I do really well in school because they built an entire system based off of people that can do that, right? When you're like, oh, you read something and you good, and whereas someone like even like my brother, not necessarily a similar story to you, but he learns a completely different way and just never really and struggled a lot in school simply because he was not built to be able to learn in that style of environment that everyone was all like, here's how you learn, here's the best way that you can do things. But I do think, like, I have found as I got older that a lot of sometimes we in the school system we forgot that human element sometimes, right? Where we've forgotten that people are people, they all learn differently, they are coming from different experiences, and we have to take that into account of why maybe they're not learning the way that we think they should be learning.
Yes, yes. There's a lot of professors who could really use that advice.
We're not going to name them by names.
No, not
You
on
almost
here.
wouldn't have to. You almost would just pull out a roster and you're there.
It's going to be in the comments.
Just go to Rate My Professor.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's what you'll know. But I think it's not just at the university level in school as a system. It's in other places too. It's in the workplace, right? And all forms of workplace, in the private sector, government, nonprofit, right? If you're not really intentional about creating human-centric spaces and practices and policies that reflect those things, then we're left with the culture, the default culture, right? Which is the default culture of our American society of like work, produce.
Because it's going so well.
Yeah.
Right?
As is, it's going
been fine.
so well thus
Don't change
far.
it.
Let's not change a thing. Everything's going splendidly. But
Right?
I think you're right. I think it's we've developed these systems, right? That's usually whoever the leader is in place or the traditional way to do things, and that's the way we always do things. And then we wonder, right, why people are burning out, why we have so many mental health crises, why people simply aren't able to kind of maintain that level of pace, because what's going on is we see the dollar or we see the funding, and we drive to get either more funding or raise all of that, and that becomes kind of that's the centric place, the financial money centric thing, rather than just being more human centric. I think. But anyway, keep going. I want to know, because I know, like,
And that's what I loved about Bitwise.
I don't know we were there yet.
Yeah, we've taken a leap, I think, at some point.
You said.
Well, I mean, we could.
Excuse me.
We could jump to that. Let's because
No, we don't have to.
I want to, but that leads into it, right? Because I know that Bitwise.
I was talking about the elephant in the room.
They position themselves as human centric, and I think that obviously you were there in the middle of that from the Merced perspective, but I think the elephant in the room, right, is understanding that what happened at Bitwise is not reflective on you, is not reflected on the people that were, especially in the Merced Bitwise, or even that were working the building. You all were sold on a concept and an ideal, and those ideals and those concepts were pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And let's take it at its core. One, are you someone that really likes to engage in like those bigger ideas, right? Like when you think about these huger issues in the world, and you look to fix some of these systemic issues that are happening. Is that kind of where your mind always goes? Have you always been kind of that person that's like, this world is a friggin' mess. Let's tackle this. Have you always been that person?
I think so. I think I've been the person, the idealist of, hey, I think that there's a better way. We could do this in a, especially right after college. I mean, you're young, you're enthusiastic, right?
And where does that come from?
Ooh, where's that come from? Ooh. Because I'm thinking my dad was very pragmatic. He also...
You bring him up a lot. Is your dad very much like, is that someone that you believe in, someone that you take a lot of what... Because I'll be honest, my dad is someone that I've idolized my entire life, like me personally. My family has always said, you are just like your father, for good and for bad. Like, well, they said it as a joke, and I'm all like, I don't know what you mean. Like, that seems like the coolest thing ever. Yeah. Just like him.
Yeah, I think he has certain values that I really respect in him and admire in him. His humility, his thinking about everybody in the room, his hard work, ethics. So yeah, I think so. And then my mom, she's the eldest also of like 7, 8 children. I don't know how many. I don't remember actually. I'd have to count them. I don't want to right now.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay. And she was always helping everybody around her. And so I think I have those two qualities in me that I want to help, but I know that, when I was with the high school district, I wanted to help everybody. But I realized, and there's something that is used in education a lot, which is the story of the starfish, where there's somebody out in the beach and they're throwing starfish back into the sea. And someone approaches them and asks, well, what are you doing? Like, well, I'm saving a starfish. I'm like, what? How can you save a starfish if there's so many? Like, how are you going to end this? How are you going to ever be able to save all of them? Well, it's not about saving all of them. It's about saving at least one of them. And so that was something that I learned at the school district.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that. I have so many issues sometimes with, like, as a society, we tend to be like, all right, let's look at this huge problem, and now we're all going to talk about this huge problem for decades. And I think sometimes we've forgotten sometimes it just does come down to saving one person, one life, and we should never forget about that.
Yeah, we talk so much about can we tilt the needle on these big things, right? We had this come up in a meeting that we were in this week, and it's like, well, do we really have the resources that we need to tilt the needle on this? It's not about tilting the needle. It's about saving the one, right? It's about helping the one. It's about fighting for that one person who otherwise just gets stepped on or stepped over. And that's what I'm hearing you say. Something else that you say makes me curious. So I think that your curiosity and your inventiveness, those qualities that you have, I think those are things that you came with. I think that's in your wiring. My curiosity about that is, what was it that your parents did that encouraged you to develop those things? Because a lot of times those things get squashed in kids because they're invisible and they're a little bit idealistic, and people have a tendency to tell these people, well, your head is in the clouds. What did your parents do to encourage you to develop those instead of to kind of kill those things?
I think that they always supported me in exploring different things at school. As you can tell, school was really important in my life. And so I think that they just supported me in exploring different things. I explored karate, right? Karate. There's a picture out there. But during karate, that's where I learned I'm a lover, not a fighter. That was yeah.
You learned a valuable lesson.
Yes, I did.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I just got into different sports and FBLA and just different clubs and organizations. So I think it was a lot of that that allowed me to. I even put on dances during Christmas time. I loved to dance and to choreograph dances, and so I remember doing the Baby One More Time for my family.
Excellent. Very
during
good.
Christmas, and so I think that fanning that flame of exploration and curiosity really helped me. But I also had constraints, right? Like financial constraints that I could only do so many things, especially so. School was the best platform for that because there was a lot of, it was free and it was accessible and it was during the school day or after school. So I think those two things, that having the accessibility and parents who supported that.
Did you have a lot of opportunities at school to engage in different types of activities, or was it just like you go in, here's what you're learning, this is all you're learning? Were there actual opportunities that you had in school, school system?
As far as learning, everything was pretty much cookie cutter. But instead of 6 periods, I had 3 blocks. So it was longer class size or longer class times. But after school, there was a lot of opportunity to explore that. Yeah, that's really the space where
And how important is that, do you think, like for kids to be able to have that opportunity to be able to explore these different aspects? Like, I feel like it's so important nowadays. Sometimes I don't think we support that in our kids enough. Just like, oh, let's have you explore karate, or let's have you explore like dance, or some of these
bowling,
other bowling,
like you in college.
You know, it was my favorite class of my freshman year. I will say that much.
Pottery.
See, I never did pottery. They never offered pottery, and I feel like, and to this day, have never done it.
Oh my gosh, it's the best.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like I really missed out on just a life skill. But I think it's important that we, in our children, we really invest in these kind of tendencies sometimes they have to be creative or be inventive or to think like, you know, these big pictures. And sometimes I think we do squash it too often.
We do not live in a prevailing culture that encourages creators. We live in a prevailing culture that encourages consumers. And so what we must do, right, in service of the next generation, is we must teach them that it is better to create than to consume. And this is something, of course, I work on with my kids, and that's just going to be the eternal thing. But I think that's exactly it. Is we need to give them more opportunities to do than to experience sometimes.
And what degree did you end up with, by the way? Like,
Badassery.
Nice. Quality.
It's a BS.
a BS.
It's a BS.
And the badassery.
Most degrees are BS, but that's gonna leave that there for right now. When you worked at the high school level, you obviously are a fan of the human-centric model, naturally inventive, idealistic. How did you get hired to work at Bitwise?
How did I get hired to work at Bit? They did what was called a vibe check.
Okay.
So at the time, Irma, the co-CEO, was doing all the hiring because she had this gut intuition sense of whether or not you were the right fit for the company. And I know other people like that in my personal life who their intuition, they have this knack for just knowing and reading people's energy, like you are someone I want to connect with, you, right? Or you, not so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep my distance. And so it sounded like she had the same thing going on. And so I got hired, told her the same story I shared with you about college and living in a trailer park. And then she asked me my why. What is your why?
Yeah.
And I think that's where, the why was really important.
And then she asked you your why. And this was for the position in Merced, or was it just in general, just Bitwise at that point, where they were Bakersfield and
yeah, they were established in Fresno, Bakersfield, and then they had been searching for somebody for 2 years, but they didn't find anybody quite yet. And I think somebody in my network connected me to them. And they said, hey, they're looking for somebody and we think you're a good fit. And it's just a meet and greet. Just meet with them and let's see where it goes. So I met first with Chanel, and then she said, hey, I want you to meet the CEO. And so I met with Irma. And, when she asked me my why, that's when she's like, okay,
and at the time,
you got this.
What was your why?
At the time, my why was my family and my sister. For when I was younger, along with education, my dad would always instill, and that's the word, inculcar, instill not only education, but he would say, your sister, you only have each other. When your dad and your mom and I are gone, you're only going to have each other. You're not going to have anybody else. So you need to take care of each other. And as the eldest, that was always just even in my DNA and how I was brought up.
Sure.
And so for the longest time growing up, it was, I got to make sure that I take this path, that I'm a good example for my sister because she's watching every single move I make. Then it became, I want to do this for my cousins so that they can see that there's other stuff out there, that there's opportunities, that if you pursue something, right, there's benefits to it, or there's, if you have that grit and resiliency and you continue fighting for things, you're going to get good things in the end. And at the time, that was my why, that I wanted to be a good example for my family, that I wanted to inspire them to pursue other things. And really my family was, the the foundation for me to be able to move up economically, move up into, not living paycheck to paycheck.
Because the concept that you were sold on, right, was developing these Bitwise coming into these communities and developing these opportunities and programs, especially in a digital kind of technology space, that were going to uplift the communities, right? And then that was probably, and again, I don't know, because this is actually you and I, to be clear, this is really the first time you and I have ever talked about this, right? That was what I thought that they were kind of selling everyone on, right? Like, hey, we're going to be able to come in, and as this company, like, we're going to be able to kind of really make an impact because we don't have these same restrictions that like government has or that nonprofits have, and we can actually make a legitimate investment and impact within our community. And then so that was kind of what I felt like, what I was seeing is they were selling everyone on. In the meantime, they were like, hey, by the way, rent some office space from us. That will help us kind of make these investments, or you get to be on the ground floor of whatever we're going to be creating, right? Am I kind of close in that assessment? Am I, what was really appealing other than the why that what they asked?
So that was my personal why, and the I guess the professional why was because when I did work at Yosemite, I got to see a lot of the needs that young people had along with their families, and so Bitwise sold this idea of creating tech economies in underestimated places. And it was through this tech ecosystem that had 3 parts to it. The first one was paid apprenticeship programs with livable wages. The second part was selling the business side of things, selling development of websites and apps and, the techie stuff. And the third part was a sense of place and the renting of spaces within our places that were thriving and vibing. And so those 3 components were interwoven together. And so I thought, yes, this is exactly what Merced needs. This is exactly the type of hope and future and opportunities that young people need in order to reach a place of thriving versus just staying in a state of surviving financially, but then also surviving mentally, right? There's a lot of that happens to your brain when you're in that state of survival mode where you have to choose whether you're going to pay for food or pay for the backpack or buy your kids new shoes, right? So your brain is literally on survival mode. Like, there's science to back this up. And so when you're on survival mode, you're not showing your best self. You're maybe not humanistic centered, right? Because you have to think, am I going to eat tomorrow? Am I going to eat my next meal, right? I had kids who were hoarding food. I had kids living in hotels. I literally had kids living in parks here in Merced County who they didn't want to go to the shelters because it was scary for them and they were asked to do drugs, right? And so they'd rather stay in a public space where they felt a little bit more safer. So, I got to see what extreme poverty does to people financially, with housing, with food, but then also mentally, and how it's really tough for you to really use the part of the brain that lets you be creative, that gives you the opportunity for decision making and discipline and better choices. So for me, Bitwise was one of the answers to this, right? And more so that I wasn't a nonprofit. Oh God, we don't have to be writing grants all the time, or we don't have to be pursuing money all the time, right? It was in government, so we weren't at the whim of elected officials and whether or not this was a priority for them. And the model, the model was one thing, and then there was the how they did that. Meaning the policies and the practices, that nobody got paid below $20 an hour. People got a livable wage. Even if you were a custodian, you got a livable wage. You and your family had medical benefits. You even had pet insurance. You had every other Friday off. We were very intentional about the values and evangelizing within the Bitwise system, that we were about giving people grace and giving people compassion and living and thinking and giving people the benefit of the doubt, even when they're ugly parts or their survival parts showed up,
Sure.
we said and told each other, they must be going through something. We're going to give them grace and we'll talk about this later because we do need to talk this through, right? So it was human centric to the core. I mean, until everything happened, but
Well, but that's the point, right? I mean, you're right. I mean, extreme poverty it's not even just mental health stressors, right? It's physical health stressors. Like, there's absolute information and facts on like how your level of poverty, how that increases your stress, but also then starts to affect your physical health, right?
Yes.
And then Merced, we are, as much as we continue to grow, we're still a very rural and a poor community, and there is very much that people in Merced County cannot afford to live here. But weirdly enough, right, we're one of the cheapest counties to live in the state of California. So definitely and my argument, like, and then, even like if we're doing like a hindsight thing, right? My argument is like, if we look at some of these other communities that Bitwise was opening up and interested in, they're very similar.
Yes.
Like really, really poor communities, but people rich. And as well as like talented people that were here. And I love the concept of that localized pipeline for leadership and for talent. I love that. I think too often, especially in some of these larger institutions, we're looking for people to hire, and we're like, well, we're gonna have to go out of the community. We're gonna have to go out of the state. We're gonna to be able to hire. We won't find talent any other way. And I always have an issue with that because I see the level of talent and commitment that this county can offer. And I always we should at least look locally first.
Right.
But I also see how that possibly could be, depending on who's doing the hiring or depending on the actual thoughts, feelings, goals of the person doing the hiring, how that could get slightly turned inward, and then you're actually hiring people that will, help your agenda or help your overall motive rather than you're actually benefiting the community. When you got hired here, were you responsible for hiring additional people in? Did Irma hire people? How did that? How did the company build from Merced?
Yeah, I had to I made recommendations to people. To Irma, I put people through the pipeline for hiring, and I got to hire 2 people, my executive assistant and the director of Bitwise. And so those were the only 2 people that were directly I would be leading. Everything else, all other people, I put people through the pipeline for an events coordinator, for I think social media marketing, just different roles, and they were under different departments and under different leadership. So my role was to really start creating the tech ecosystem here locally, and then at the same time creating that culture and holding that culture, that Bitwise culture that Bitwise was human centric,
which is an amazing culture to kind of really establish, right?
Yeah,
like that's
yeah.
the thing is, and I don't want to lose sight of that. Where that's appealing, and to start an organization or a company or something where you're all like, yeah, no, we want to recognize where people are coming from, and we're gonna meet them where they are. We're not gonna be bottom line centric, right? We're not going to sit there and see the money and want to increase our profit margins. We understand that people are what's building this, and we're going to invest in people. What was it like working in that environment? What was it?
Oh, it was a dream.
Yeah.
It was a dream. It was supportive. It was loving. It was compassionate. It was fun. You could explore, you could be creative, you could ask questions, you could be curious. And I didn't realize that that's what I was missing. And, I experienced, myself and others were coming from toxic work environments. We were coming from places where, we would be yelled at or belittled, where if we shared something with someone, it wouldn't be kept just between us 2, but now everybody knew within the system, right? We were coming from places where it was, it was just not healthy and sometimes not safe to work in those places. But because of need, you have to make sacrifices to your mental health and feeling of safety, psychological safety, because these are good paying jobs. These are wages, these are benefits, these are vacation hours that you get.
Sure.
And so to work in a place where you had unlimited responsible vacation and you didn't have to worry about benefits for you and your loved ones, where we were intentionally creating a space of supporting each other. It was really a dream. It was working at Bitwise made me realize that everyone deserves to work in a place like this. Workers deserve this. Workers deserve thriving wages. Workers deserve benefits. Workers deserve psychological safety. We deserve rest and recovery. We deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. That's what I got from Bitwise. And people always ask me, would you do it again? Like, the things that happened, yeah, damn, it hurt. And it hurt a lot because it was so beautiful to be at the core of this in Merced and be building this hope and idea and dream of what it could be like, because nowhere else here, at least that I've experienced, had this and offered this.
Right. Well, and I think that's what's really the kind of the plot point to really look at, right? It's like they offered something that seems so fantastical, but doesn't have to be. That's the weird thing, right? Like it's something like you're like, oh wow, like this is, here's like nirvana, utopia over here, and you're like, we're not asking for that much more. Like there's not that much more that we're necessarily asking for. When did you, or did you ever, see any indications of what may have been happening behind this?
Let's maybe because there's a portion of our audience that doesn't know what we're talking about.
Oh, that's true.
So for the sake of our ginormous audience, let's talk a little bit about the narrative of what did happen.
Okay.
Like, how did it land?
Oh.
So what happened out in the public?
Let's just tell the story. You guys can Google it; it's fine. Yeah. But let's tell the story from your perspective. You were on the ground.
Yeah. Okay. So it's this great place, awesome place. We're expanding to 10 different cities across the nation. We're thriving. We're vibing. We're having a good time. And then here comes Memorial Day of 2023, and it is a holiday, obviously. 8 p.m. at night, we get an email that says, you need to log on. We're having a meeting at 8:15. We log on, and they say, and you can Google the video. Yeah. You can Google the video. And they essentially say, we don't have any more money. We need to furlough everybody immediately. And we hope that we can come back from this. We don't come back from this. It ends up going bankrupt, and we end up finding out months and months later, after an FBI investigation, that the two CEOs were
allegedly.
It's in an affidavit for the FBI. So I don't know. Okay, allegedly.
I just say allegedly.
Let's be safe here.
Yeah,
Let's be safe here.
Just in case.
Yeah, they don't have anything to do. They may be listening. So
okay, that's true. That's true. Allegedly, they were forging bank statements that were saying they had more money in their accounts than they really did, and they were showing these bank statements to the board members, who then believed them and would invest more money and would support the expansion to all these other cities and hiring and all this and all that. So that's what happened.
So then, to answer Rob's question, is that so 8:15 you log onto the meeting, we're furloughing everybody. That's the first time you get any idea that something's going on.
Well, I think I don't know if this is an American thing or maybe just an underestimated person, being an underdog. I consider myself an underdog, right? That there was something in my gut, like, and people would say, like, this is too good to be true. This is too good to be true. And would kind of side-eye me, like, right when I would tell the story. So I think that there was just a little thorn of, like, this isn't right. this isn't sitting well, but I believed in it. I believed in the work of transforming lives through upskilling in technology. We see the good paying jobs in technology, right? That there's 6 figures and you get benefits and all this and all that, and you're able to do remote work. So I believed all of that. And the way that we interacted here at the local level, how do you not believe when the relationships are so rich and loving and the connectedness of each other? We are just about uplifting each other and helping each other out. But there were some, and I like to call them pink flags, because the dream overshadowed those flags of being red flags. I think they weren't entirely red flags, but some of the pink flags that I saw, right, were that we went to paper checks instead of direct deposit. That, some people's benefits were not being paid.
Oh.
And so it was like, ooh, right? What is happening here? And there was a couple of other pink flags. I think I talk about it in my LinkedIn in a post, but I don't remember some of the other ones. But there was a few pink flags where I'm like, this doesn't sit right.
Are they pink flags now, or were they pink flags then? Because what I see a lot, right, is people like, oh, well, that was too good to be true, and blah, blah, blah. Like, everyone can, Monday quarterback this thing.
Yeah,
of course.
As much as they want to. And people are wondering, well, why didn't you notice
Say
anything?
something.
But here's the thing, right? It happens every single day in companies, nonprofits all over the world. Like, are you telling me that me personally, like, I know what the inner workings are happening at United Way Worldwide over in Virginia? No. Now, if like some sort of, I have been made aware of things that happened when, like, they're like, hey, by the way, this is about to hit the press. So they sent out, an email or something like that. But to suggest perhaps that, oh, why wouldn't you recognize, that this was too good to be true, or, well, like, that's ridiculous in my opinion. Like, you do not know what's going on if you are a pilot at American Airlines. You don't know what's going on at Boeing or you don't you're not there at those levels, right? So one, I kudos to you for recognizing perhaps pink flags, but just the fact that people are always like, oh, why? How would you not know? Why would you know? You came to work in this place because of the vision, right? And that's what brings people to companies and organizations all the time. Is I'm going to sell you on a vision, and you're going to engage in the vision. And there's always a certain level of trust there after you do your initial homework, right? I'm not saying that you go into anything blind, but after you do your initial homework, there's a level of trust that I would think that you mofos know what you're doing, or that you have just a little bit of like idea of what's happening. And we could discuss what exactly happened later on, well, whatever. But so you started to see some pink flags.
Yes, and the thing is that they're pink because they always had reasons behind these decisions, right? Where we're going to paper checks because we just got, a $50 million investment. I don't remember the exact numbers.
Sure.
Right. But, we had a large investment come in. And so a community bank can't possibly manage this large investment. So we need to go to a bigger bank.
Gotcha.
So, that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's why there was always reasons. And being that we were human-centric, being that, some of the values of leadership were give people grace, we're like, okay, well, we're going to give you grace here, assuming that not assuming, but having that trust that because we are human-centered, you're going to take care of the humans in your company and you're not doing anything nefarious.
Yeah.
Right? But eventually, right, allegedly it comes out, and it sounds like the two CEOs really shielded themselves so that no one else would know and no one else would get some of the consequences, the legal consequences of, forging bank statements.
Right.
Supposedly.
Allegedly. Yes.
So Memorial Day, you're called in, right?
Online.
8:15, and then after that, things just start to close, right? Like they shut things servers down, the building, like what is going on at that point? Is it just kind of like a whirlwind of chaos almost? Just like, what is happening here?
That night, it's a closing of the emails, no access to your Google Drive. So they start cutting off access to all these resources and all the things that you've developed, right, for this company. So, and then the next day, because of those pink flags, it wasn't as hard of a hit for me. And so I start calling and checking in on people. So I checked in on 30 people or something. I'm like, hey.
How big of a staff was over there at that point?
At ours, almost 20.
Almost 20?
Yeah. So made sure to check in on our people, and then, some of my mentors and leaders within Bitwise, I checked in on them as well.
Well, because there was and I think that is also what's, everyone, maybe not everyone, but maybe there were pink flags, like organizationally, but everyone was caught by surprise. Not just Merced, right? But like all over was kind of caught by this. And this came out of nowhere. And a majority of people that were working for these companies were all of a sudden just furloughed. Let loose into the wind.
Yeah.
Almost. Without like any, and there was no real, was there any
safety
effort?
net? No. We had to coordinate everything from within. So right away, I think Eric Serrato and I connected, and he's like, hey, what can we do? Let's go in. So they came in, and what normally would be this would typically, the way when things are done right is you give people a heads up so that then they can plan out their next steps, apply for jobs, apply for safety net resources,
and
right?
Here's the thing, and you don't have to answer this because you used to work there, but I find it to be completely ridiculous, right? That ever got that far. You're telling me that you didn't know that this was going to happen, or this was a possibility, or that, you're telling me that, a business deal didn't come through, or let's use that as an example. We thought that we're going to get this much money, but we didn't. Whatever. You should at least have prepped for the fact that it would not have gone through. How much of an ego do you have that you're going to throw all of your eggs into this thing, right, or whatever, and you're just going to assume for the best, or you don't actually care about these people?
I know.
That what you did do is you sold people on a vision, but you sold specific people on a vision.
Yes.
Because you wanted them to do your work for you, but you did not you yourself did not adhere to the vision that you were selling people. You yourself were more interested in the money than the actual people that you were bringing into this. Now, that is my read on it. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before.
Never.
But because you affected entire communities and you affected people, and that must have been difficult for you. Because I want to assume that you may have thought that at any point did you place any blame on yourself? Did you start to feel, as more and more things were coming to light about what was happening, did you start to feel like, I can only imagine any number of things? A little bit of guilt, a little bit of I can't believe I was hoodwinked, right?
Bamboozled, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that a week before, phone calls were, a week before, but months before, they said no more credit card usage. You can't use the credit cards anymore. I'm like, okay.
Okay, yeah.
And then a week before, they're like, you can't do any spending whatsoever. You can't do I forget what exactly was happening, but I thought to myself, okay, we're like a multi-million-dollar company. Jake, one of the CEOs, is saying that we're almost $500 million company. So there must be some type of levers, some type of, backup plan.
Yeah.
The board members must know, right? There's something, right? There's no way that this is leading into this path of no return.
Yeah.
But then this happens. I'm like, holy crap, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And so
they had, for the most part, kept all of you like there's like levels, right, of like need to know. So you were on this certain level of need to know, and there were like higher levels, and apparently at the very top level was just the two.
Yes.
Right, and they had all the access to all the information.
Yes.
And they were never sharing that with you.
But even some of the higher levels above me didn't know either. Like
Yeah.
I've reconnected with them. They're like, no, we thought there must be a plan B, C, D, E, F, G.
Right.
Like there's no way that we have zero in the bank account.
Well, which is one of the dangers, I think, when you base an entire concept, both a company, even a nonprofit, off of the personality type of the leader, right? When you're like, this person, and I think you see it a lot sometimes with startups, right? You have this person that's really dynamic come through and like builds this entire thing, but it's, at the end of the day, there's no secure foundation. It's built on their personality, built on their kind
Image,
of like their
brand,
image, brand.
saying it with their chest.
Yeah, yeah, right. And then what happens, I think, all of the time is eventually that doesn't carry you on to the next level. Eventually, the business deal goes south, or you don't raise as much money as you kind of thought you were going to raise. And if there's no foundation there, or if you didn't actually bring your leaders, your local leaders in to like the know, right? There's
to
no
help
way
you solve the
help you
issues.
solve the issues.
Yeah.
And you like disappeared.
I did. Oh, what was I feeling? That was your question. Oh my gosh. I was feeling confused. I was feeling like it was somehow my fault as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I had brought these friends and colleagues into this dream job, and now they're left out in the wind, like you said. And so I felt embarrassed. I felt, guilty. I felt like I had somehow had to hold on to some of that blame. And so I decided I needed, after checking in with people, we held a healing circle, at least, as much as we could heal at the time, because it was so new and so raw.
Of course.
And we said, you know what? I came from a household where myself and my partner both worked for Bitwise or one of their companies. And so we both lost our jobs. And because I was the face of this, right? Like how am I gonna, like, how do I show now? Who am I now, right? Yeah. How do I get back to my own center,
because you were connected to your community. And
Yeah.
so you sold your community on this idea, this concept, and this company, your personal feelings and reputation, not necessarily reputation, but I can see how you feel your reputation is somewhat damaged a little bit because you brought people in to trust you.
Yeah.
And the people above you did not seem to kind of respect that, right? And kind of, I can see how that could be like really like just like requiring you to really heal.
Yeah. So I took time off because I was hurting.
Yeah.
And I had done so much work on myself and my mental health and who I was as a person, because I no longer wanted to show up in those spaces of with that survival mentality that really I was cocooning while I was with Bitwise. I mean, there was times when people recruited me to be on boards or other commissions, and I thought, I'm still cocooning. I need this space of safety and love in order for me to really find and develop my true voice and to live in my own strength and my own alignment and centeredness. That, coming out of that, I needed to go back to that. So I took about 3 months to, and there was other things happening in my life too, personal things. Sure. I mean, there was like ups and downs. I put down my dog of 17 years, a beautiful bulldog, Kiki. She chose me. Again, I wasn't even supposed to have a dog, but she chose me. She stood right in front of me and said, "Oh my God, I want you." She helped me with my mental health when I was in my deepest, darkest hole. My niece got surgery. It's a surgery that we've been waiting for 11 years. We had a family reunion, which was really fun. So it was ups and downs, life was happening, right? And then at the same time, I was also trying to detach the ownership that I felt I had over this awful thing that happened to my people here in Merced.
And, when your idealism, was that affected in any way? Like when you even nowadays, now when you enter situations, are you not saying that you're jaded or that you're cynical, right? But do you find yourself more wary when entering into situations?
I feel I'm still a visionary. I'm still idealist. I'm still optimistic. Living cocooning in that space really helped me attach myself to those things.
Yeah.
That it is hard to not be those things if I'm not taking care of, or as long as I take care of myself, I'm attached to those things. I am living in those values.
So you realize, right, that those things that you have, that you bring, are not attached to Bitwise whatsoever, right? Like it's like you bring all of that naturally. So everything that you brought to Bitwise, that's just you, and that Bitwise doesn't define you or even Marisa or anyone. Like they don't define you. That was someone playing a game with people's lives and preying on people, and you're not defined by that.
Correct. I'm not. It was just 2 years in my life where I got to really work on myself, and now I got to step into almost like the real world, right? But when I go into these spaces, I'm more often going to listen to my intuition, right? If it tells me something, then I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to ask, well, where are your results? What does the data look like, right? Or what is, right? I'm going to ask my partner, hey, I need a second person in the room because I want to know what your gut feeling is, your intuition, because his is a lot more calibrated than mine, because I've really had to work on listening to my gut. So I'm going to ask other people. I'm going to, dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to hold my boundaries strong. If my gut tells me like, hey, you're not for me, then I'm not going to pursue a relationship with you. I don't know what that means for future, relationships and connections that I have with people, but I'm listening to myself now.
And what is that? What is happening to you? Like let's, as we kind of, I'll let Andrew wrap it up as he usually is. But what are you working on now? Like you Bitwise, you cocooned.
Yes,
cocooned. You focus on yourself. Now you're back out here in the community. We're working a little bit together. But I don't necessarily want to talk about that. I want to talk about you, Cultiva Greatness, like your envision of that. Where are you headed?
Yeah. So once I stepped out, after re-cocooning, re-cocooning, being with family, I thought about the opportunities here. I even thought, do I want to leave? Am I going to leave? Is that an option? We bought our house here. And so I said, we have roots now. We have roots. I have a network. I have friends. I have friends who are now family. So there's no way that I can leave. And I said, and there's also no way that I can go back to working in systems. I mean, no offense to anybody working in systems or the leaders in the systems, only offense to some of you.
I mean, you know who you are.
Put them in the comments.
Yeah. Drop that in. I want to see that in the comments, guys.
Excuse me. So I thought, there's no way that I can go back into systems, because for me to go back into the system after working so hard to cocoon and to really develop myself into a stronger, more loving, peaceful human being, if I go back, I'm going to be surrounded for 8 hours a day by people who don't know what they don't know. And they don't know any other way but the system's way. And the system does a really good job of maintaining the culture unless you have really strong intentional leadership. And leadership who, like you said earlier, who doesn't just hire people who reflect themselves or reflect their values or reflect their thought leadership. And so I thought there's no way that I can go back into working to a system. I have to create what I know people deserve. And that's essentially what I'm doing with Cultiva Greatness. I'm creating a place where I want to work, where I don't get the Sunday scaries, right? Where I'm like, oh my God, where I'm tossing and turning for most of the night because I'm dreading going into work, and then wake up in the morning thinking like, oh, I don't want to go into work. Like, no, that completely changed for me. I was looking forward to going to work. I got up with enthusiasm. And I wanted that to continue that. And so that's when we decided I'm gonna bet on myself. We're gonna bet on ourselves.
As I hear you talk, one of the things that I hear in your narrative a lot is that you got someplace that you weren't supposed to be. You were saved, and at the beginning of your story, you weren't supposed to have a dog, right? This happy accident narrative keeps coming up. But when I look at your actual story, what I see is that at every step, you made a choice or took an action that took advantage of that happy accident. And I think that one of the things that interests me most about you, because see, when that happens at Bitwise and you find yourself in a culture that is perfect and then find out that it's founded on a lie, essentially, right? Not that the culture is a lie, but it's allegedly founded on a lie. A lot of people, and in fact, I know a lot of people, don't make it out of that.
Yeah.
They don't make it out of that because they don't have a mental framework that says, I can make a choice, I can take an action, and I can move forward. So if our audience right now was going to build a mental framework that says, like you have said, when something presents itself to me, whether it's a good opportunity or a bad opportunity, I'm going to make the choice. How do you do that? How can we do that? How can we learn that from you?
Oh my gosh.
he thinks hard about things.
That's why I sit here for an hour in silence, just so that I can.
That's what I gathered.
That
Like, oh, okay. How do I help others make choices, better choices, or make a framework,
like,
right?
what is it about you that where you make the choice, you do the thing? Like,
I think in a way, right? Every single moment that we've heard today, right, is you actively making a choice, because you very well could have, everything that happened at Bitwise, you very well could have fallen apart. We wouldn't even be talking today because you would have sold the house, journeyed somewhere, and no one would ever hear from you again.
Started
right?
living by the beach.
Right, started living by the beach. But every single step of the way, even when you went to school, right? Like you're like, oh well, I didn't get accepted to UC Davis. You made the choice, right? San Diego. Oh, sorry.
The beach. It's the beach.
That's the beach one. But you made the choice, right, to look for an additional opportunity, to go to an additional opportunity. Like, I think that's the question. It's like when these moments arrive, like, what is it about you that you're like, I'm going to make a separate choice?
Yeah, what's pulling you forward out of all of those moments?
That's such a really great question. I don't know if I can answer it directly. I think right now I'm in the space where I'm really careful about, very intentional and discerning about where, to whom, and how I use my energy. Time and attention are your soul's currency. And so I'm really careful about how I use up that currency. And so for me, is it serving is it aligned to my values? Does it serve me in my mission to serve the world and to be of service to others, but then also to live a life that I want to live, that I'm excited about, where I also have time for rest and recovery and time for my human experience and not just for my worker experience? So I think those are some of the temperatures that I check when I make those choices. I think from a young age, it was of ensuring that I had the people around me that I could talk with and reflect on some of these choices, so that I wasn't going and leaning on my survival brain to make those choices. So I think now, because of what I've learned about the impacts of toxic stress on the brain, but I was only, so that's the self-awareness aspect of things. And then because of the self-care aspect, the ensuring to take care of myself, right? My time and attention, my ensuring that my body's a temple, ensuring that I'm hanging out with the right people. That's more of the self-care aspect. And then the last one is the self-love aspect. Where is it serving me so that I can love myself, so that then I can show up in that fullest love in the world when I step outside the doors of my house. So I think it's evolved over time, and it hasn't just been one thing. It's all these things got me to this place.
What I'm hearing you say, and forgive me if I'm saying it wrong, but what I'm hearing you say is that your progression has been through the steps of knowing yourself and preparing yourself more and more and more. So like an athlete, learns a sport early on in life, and then learns the aspects of conditioning, and then specializes in a field. It feels like you've been through that journey with your own self-awareness and your understanding of the way that you operate as a human in a human world. And the more that you get that, the more prepared you are in that moment. And it feels like now you're very prepared. You're very intentional. Whereas before you might have felt like I was being saved, or I lucked into that. But now you're taking steps forward. So the more you know yourself and the more you prepare yourself, the more prepared you are to make those decisions. And I think it's not by accident that you tell the story of the star thrower, because I think what that makes you is the star thrower, right? Because whereas before you may have approached an ocean with a beach full of starfish, and you might have accidentally kicked one back into the surf, now you're being very intentional through all of your experiences, all your bruises, all your scars, all that stuff. You're being very intentional about the fact that if you're going to save the starfish, it's going to be by focusing on exactly one at exactly the right time. And that, I think, is what I learned from you today. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I would add that even before saving the starfish, I'm saving myself so that I can save that starfish.
Agree. Yeah.
See, I just took away from it that it was because of the mice.
Well, that too.
After that moment.
That too.
Everything else. That's what I've been able to determine.
I would agree with that.
From that moment on has led you to where you are today. That moment with the mice.
Yeah, there's actually a guillotine for mice.
Oh my gosh.
and with that,
that's the end.
and that's the end. Thank you so much, Norma, for being
thank you
here today.
It's
We
a
appreciate
pleasure.
it.